As a business owner, perhaps you've heard the term minimum viable offer tossed around, but have been afraid to ask what it means and how it can be used for your company. In this video, we will tell you everything about minimal viable offer. 5. What is a minimum viable offer? Simply put, a minimum viable offer, MVO, also known as a minimum viable product or a MVP, is the minimum amount of benefits necessary to make a sale. Another definition states that an MVO is the version of a new product that creates the maximum amount of customer feedback and learning about the potential target market for the least amount of resources and effort. In other words, it is the cheapest prototype that customers are willing to buy. The purpose of a minimum viable offer is to minimize risk for your project by reducing the amount of initial investment and discovering in the most efficient way possible what works and what doesn't. The best way to look at an MVO is to see it as a process and not as a fixed product. What you offer specifically in your MVO will change depending on the approach you take and the feedback you receive from the marketplace. Using the bare minimum features and functionality to engage your target market, your MVO will change. From each successive test, you have to incorporate suggestions, including your release strategy. As you receive feedback, you can customize the MVO, as well as make notes for future features and modifications. It depends on what outcome you wish and the resources you have at hand. The added benefit, of course, is that you could generate revenue while still developing a product or service. Before releasing any MVO, your company should make critical assumptions about how the product or service will be received. Make note of these assumptions and see if they are confirmed or denied by your trials in the marketplace. Are certain features cumbersome or unnecessary? Are you offering enough value for the price you're charging? 4. Benefits of a minimum viable offer. The benefits of an MVO are that it can focus your business away from non-essential tasks and steer it towards the shortest path between now and taking orders on your potential orders. Because there's less features, there's also less bugs and things that can go wrong in the development phase that can delay launch and cost more in the long term. Considering most startups are bootstrapped and run on a shoestring budget, MVOs are also a strategy to gain traction in the marketplace. Bridging the gap between what your company is willing and able to provide versus what consumers want is vital to sustain your business. While using an MVO are good for companies that wish to run on their own capital, it also helps establish a proof of concept that you can use as due diligence to attract investors. Don't confuse proof of concept as your MVO, as a proof of concept isn't the completed solution. Your MVO is the complete solution. An MVP allows you to attract not only target users, but also people who are actively screening the market for new technologies. Early consumers can help you a lot with their feedback to define the individuality of your product and gain an advantage over your competitors. Testing and customizing a project for your target audience is easier when it's not overloaded with technical features. An MVP allows you to test a minimal project and then seamlessly add additional features. This is more reasonable than removing useless features you've already paid for. Creating an MVP starts with the most important core features, which are likely to remain largely unchanged until the end of development. Features you add later may change dramatically or be eliminated altogether. If you don't use the MVP approach in your project, you may waste a lot of resources on features that won't be needed in the end. Developing an MVP will help you better allocate resources and not be blindsided by elements of your application. 3. How do you define your minimum viable product? How do you develop a minimum viable product, and how will your team know when you have an MVP ready for launch? Here are a few strategic steps to take. 1. Make sure your planned MVP aligns with your business objectives. Before weighing which features to build, the first step in developing your MVP is to make sure the product will align with your team's or your company's strategic goals. What are those goals? Are you working towards a revenue number in the coming 6 months? Do you have limited resources? These questions might affect whether now is even the time to start developing a new MVP. Also ask what purpose this minimum viable product will serve. For example, will it attract new users in a market adjacent to the market for your existing products? If that is one of your current business objectives, then this MVP plan might be strategically viable. But if your company's current priority is to continue focusing on your core markets, you might need to shelve this idea and focus instead, perhaps, on an MVP designed to offer new functionality for your existing customers. 2. Start identifying specific problems you want to solve or improvements you want to enable for your user persona. Now that you've determined your MVP plans align with your business objectives, you can start thinking through the specific solutions you want your product to offer users. These solutions, which you might write up in user stories, epics, or features, do not represent the product's overall vision, only subsets of that vision. Remember, you could develop only a small amount of functionality for your MVP. You will need to be strategic in deciding which limited functionality to include in your MVP. You could base these decisions on several factors, including user research, competitive analysis, how quickly you'll be able to iterate on certain types of functionality when you receive user feedback, the relative costs to implement the various user stories or epics. 3. Translate your MVP functionality into a plan of development action. Now that you've weighed the strategic elements above and settled on the limited functionality you want for your MVP, it's time to translate this into an action plan for development. Note, it's essential to keep in mind the V in MVP. The product must be viable. That means it must allow your customers to complete an entire task or project and provide a high-quality user experience. An MVP cannot be a user interface with many half-built tools and features. It must be a working product that your company should be able to sell. In short, ensure your business is future-proof. That means you should have flexible, adaptable, and scalable technology stack that can leverage data science. 2. A hypothetical example. Suppose your startup develops a brand of t-shirts that are designed for cyclists in mind. After the development phase, you decide to set up a simple WordPress-based web page, offering free t-shirts with your company's decal on the back. A few t-shirts are created and distributed, but your customers complain that shirts only come in black, which creates overheating issues, and the vinyl decal sticks to their skin when under direct sunlight. However, despite the decal, your customers are overjoyed at the ability for your t-shirts to offer the ability to wick away sweat. Back to the drawing board. You take the customer's feedback to heart, make the t-shirts in a different colour, now knowing that black is not a viable option and that you'll have to find an alternative to vinyl for your company logo. With the improved design, other cyclists remark how great your t-shirt design is, but now ask for a set of matching cycling shorts, and they inquire about shirts for their children in a smaller size. Knowing that you now have a product that your target market, the cyclists, are interested in, you shelve the cycling shorts and child-size shirts for future, and concentrate on marketing your product. Your minimum viable offer has been established. As you can see, a minimum viable offer can be invaluable for your startup to thrive. Setting up the bare minimums while keeping your focus on bringing your products to the marketplace in the most efficient manner will bring needed revenue and interest from investors. 1. Drawbacks of an MVP. There are also specific challenges to keep in mind when considering the MVP development option. Determining the value of features during MVP development, it can be tricky to define core features without adding more. It would make more sense to provide customers with something effective yet simple instead of spending resources on unnecessary features. But a feature set that is too minimal may not properly represent the value of the product. So the mission of your product should be correctly defined from the very beginning. You should clearly define the customer problem you are going to solve and which features are needed for it. Perfect design. If you spend a lot of time on design, your customers will have to wait longer for functionality. Although, in the case of an MVP, it is top priority. So it's reasonable to focus on functionality, usability, and simplicity instead of perfect but complex design. Non-scaling technology stack. Often developers assume the MVP to be a very basic version of the product and choose a technology stack that does not allow the project to scale in the future. As a result, turning the MVP into a feature-rich product requires a complete redesign. To avoid this pitfall, you should build an architecture focused on keeping your data pipelines up to date. What do you think of it? Thanks for watching.